What does world-class real estate look like to you?
Try to combine old-fashioned traditional estate agent values, but with all the modern tech that can help you move that forward.
Excellent communication is at the heart of what they do.
Great real estate looks like strong leadership.
Consistency.
This episode is brought to you in partnership with Iceberg Digital. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the World Class Real Estate Podcast, sponsored by Iceberg Digital. My name is Morton and I'm joined by Mr. Ian Macbeth. How are you, mate?
I'm all good. Yeah, I always say that. I'm all good. I've got to stop saying that. I'm a bit battered, a bit broken from a race on the weekend, physically, but quite excited. I did the Thames Trail Ultra.
So you finished third. I was going to say I didn't see it, but I think I did see it. Did you finish third?
I finished third. My first proper podium finish in a good standard ultra marathon, 48 miles, point to point. I was buzzing, to be honest. I was on cloud nine, mainly because I had a lot of caffeine, and also the rush of just getting a trophy. You can see the trophy there, actually, just about in the shadow.
I've not seen that before. Very good.
Yeah, so no, I was really happy with that. Do you know what? I was thinking of how I can sort of integrate it into some sort of LinkedIn message, but ultimately, like, I started running 5 years ago, and hard work, discipline, real consistency, education, it's the same recipe for success in anything, isn't it? I've got expertise in through osteopaths to fix issues, a PT to help me where I'm weak. I've integrated recovery plans. Like the success blueprint, it doesn't happen overnight, but I'm not saying obviously it's a success, but for me on my scale, to finish third out of 150 good standard runners is a massive success for me individually. So, and we'll talk about on today's episode, success, future, and things to integrate with Mark, which I'm excited for. But yeah, it was a pretty special moment, to be fair. I was buzzing all weekend. Even though Chelsea got battered, it didn't even affect me. So,
well, I was going to say, we're not talking about football, are we?
Yeah, not for you as well. How are you? How's things?
Yeah, I'm very good. It's funny you mentioned that about consistency, because we've probably not talked consistency on the pod that much recently, because we are in the habit of doing this consistently. And, if you speak to people in the industry, the reason that they like the podcast is, how regular it is, the consistency of it all. But I, similarly to you, I was walking out the gym yesterday and someone complimented me, and I said, well, it's just consistency. I'm in the habit now of doing. I go to the gym every morning before work. We do this every Tuesday without fail at 8:00, and that regular work just compounds. And you should not only be really proud, but it is also a real statement. I wasn't running 5 years ago. Now I'm winning a podium of a good level ultra race. It's pretty significant. And there's that saying, isn't there? You'll always overestimate what you can achieve in a year and underestimate what you can achieve in 5. 5 years will be coming towards the end of 2030. The world might look a little bit different, but if you plot it and stick to it, then you can achieve, an awful lot. And we're going to talk to Mark, aren't we? No doubt, about what the future of agency will look like. He reached out to you to come on because he's super excited about AI and the advancements that they've got.
Well, yeah, it's actually the other way around. I went to EAX and Mark shared the new AI Scouts feature, and I just said to him, look, you've got to come on the podcast and talk about that, because whether you're with Life Cycle as your CRM or not, it's just stuff that you need to know. Like in agency, it's evolution. There's magic moments that happen in estate agency. I've done it for coming up, I'm in my 23rd year, and you see certain trigger points where you go, well, right, that's a bit game changing. And I think this is one of them. And I think, whether, like I say, whether you use that CRM or not, it's just something that you want to know. It's a feature you want to know, because it does show how exciting it can be, and it's time saving as well. And I always think with estate agents, if you can find something that genuinely saves you time rather than you just want it because the competition's got it, it's so valuable, because we're in the people business, right? But the amount of time we actually spend talking to the person is such a small percentage in the job that we do, because it is so admin heavy, with everything that we've got to do from a compliance point of view and from a process point of view, that if we can take some of that admin time away and put it into people time, you could double your people time very easily by that. And I think this is one of those things that potentially does that. And Mark always explains AI technology in a very good storytelling way. So I think it'll be a really good episode. And I've got a Zoom call with my guys afterwards to talk about exactly this and integrating it into avocado. So it's going to be quite helpful for me as well. So
yeah, and I think, as always with Mark, it's going to be delivered and full of passion. But also, if you're not an Iceberg client, there's loads of really good practical business advice that at this time of year could be very useful for planning for the future. So let's dive in and get Mark in, shall we?
Let's do it. Mr. Burgess, Mark, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. You guys all okay?
Yeah, we're rocking and rolling. We're recording obviously around half term, which off camera, me and Mark were chatting about very different dynamics for him and me at the moment with different age brackets. But yeah, it's all good. Life of an estate agent on half term is different for me these days. So yeah, no, it's all good. And we're gonna dive deep into some really exciting stuff, as we kind of said on the intro. But the progression for Life Cycle and Iceberg has really sort of transitioned this year, I would say, from me experiencing EAX. Mark wasn't obviously there, so generally business for you guys is pretty exciting and mind blowing daily, is it?
Yeah, pretty mind blowing. Yeah. Yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster year for us in the sense that I guess it's just continually speeded up as we've got deeper and deeper into the AI side of things. So EAX was a bit of a culmination of that, really, talking to people about some of the discoveries that we'd made over the year and releasing some agents onto test versions of it. Their results since have been pretty crazy as well. So yeah, it's pretty manic at the moment.
Yeah, love that.
As ever, Mark, always really passionate about the industry, and you mentioned about coming on today to talk about a few advancements. I'm really interested in one thing that you said there about almost falling into these changes and these efficiencies. But let's come back to that. Tell us what you've found, and maybe a little bit about how agents are using those elements and how it's improving their business performance.
Yeah, okay. So there was quite a few things that we spoke about at EAX, but the main one that really came out of it was something that we discovered called AI Scouts. So if we go back about a year, me and the team were just sitting around chatting about ideas, how we could use AI, what we could get it to do, that sort of stuff. And one of the ideas that came up was like, could we get AI to monitor the portals for agents? Could we get it to go out, look at what's going on in their particular patch, bring in all the details of the properties that are on the market with their full addresses, what's had a price reduction, what's had a sale fall through, all of that kind of stuff. And that was okay, but we wouldn't have been the first people to do that, so it was not that exciting. And then we said, okay, well, what about if we then got AI to match it up with what's going on inside their database? And obviously, because Lifecycle is a marketing system as well as a CRM system, that got a little bit more interesting, where it was like, yeah, but would there be any matches? Once you bring in all those properties, maybe there wouldn't be that much to match against. And then what about if we did that and then got it to find out how many buyers there are that match against those properties in that agent's database? And what about if we got it to look at how many properties they'd sold nearby? And what about if we got it to write some sort of outreach about it? And it was all kind of up in the air until about maybe 3 or 4 months ago, whereby we put it into testing and decided we'd try it out. And it was just absolutely fucking insane. So we did a test with a small 2-branch estate agency. They took 5 of our AI scouts out. They work like football scouts. Imagine that. So they're out watching. Imagine football scouts are out watching matches for their clubs, and they're monitoring the market, looking at which sellers are getting frustrated, what their problems are, all of that sort of stuff, and then they're reporting back to the club as to which ones are a good fit. So the agent put these out. The AI found thousands of properties, obviously, that are on the market in their postcodes. That wasn't the breakthrough bit, really. But then it came back, and within about 24 hours, it found 750 where it had the contact details, the email address, the telephone numbers, which in itself was like, okay, the room in where we were testing it went a little bit quiet. And then what happened was it just wrote 750 personalised emails, WhatsApps for these people about exactly how many buyers match against that house, whether they were first-time buyers, whether they had anything to sell, what the agent had sold nearby, and wrote all of that in about a minute. And we all just sat there like no human is going to keep up with this. This is going to be like a fucking bloodbath. Yeah, and then we put it into like we thought maybe it was just that agent. Maybe that agent just had some really good data. So we tested it with another small branch independent, one brancher, same thing happened. We tested it with another agent, same thing happened. Now I've got about 34 agents testing it across 138 postcodes, and it's just insane what's going on. I had an agent yesterday tell me that in the last 2 weeks he's got 5 listings out of it. So it's just crazy.
It is unbelievable to have been able to actually see it. You shared a video with me as well for my team. I'm talking about my team integrating it after this call, but to see it in action. Obviously, this is an audio podcast mainly, so it's hard to do that. But to describe it, to actually see it matching listings or fall-throughs or withdrawals that would take a human a lot of time to sieve through, work out, or some additional paid software, and you've still got to click buttons and run searches and do the right fields to get there. But to then see that inside your CRM, inside your database, matching with tenants, buyers, whatever it may be that you've got them registered as, often incorrectly, as you would have found with those 750 odd people. No fault of the agent. It's just the status is different for the person to what maybe they were originally registered as, because things progress and change. And then not just to match them, but to actually be able to do the outreach as well. I was thinking about this when in my old company, when you sort of went from like a senior negotiator where you were like, right, I sell everything. I'm like the senior on the front desk. And then you get this opportunity to become a valuer. And how it worked in where I was, you became the sales valuer, which meant you were the touter. So you were cutting your trade, if you like, as a valuer, but you weren't allowed to do any fresh valuations. No one was touching those because you were new. So you had to earn it. And what you had is this folder, and you used to sit in your car, and the folder used to sit on the passenger seat with all your Rightmove printouts. And then on the back of the Rightmove printout, you had all your notes like door knocked, dropped card, spoke to, got number, and you're flicking through your folder. And all day, every day, you were just out there scouting effectively, in this terminology. And that was my whole job for months, as I was cutting my trade as a valuer, just trying to get business. And I was probably paid, I don't know, 40 grand a year or something like that to do that. And, spent 50 hours a week doing it. But effectively, what you've just described is, in a matter of minutes, the job of that sales value. And then you got into fresh valuations, and you called the sales, the valuations manager was your promotion, and you could do the freshies. But that's a big role of a lot of estate agents at the moment. And I'd say, Mark, it's probably one of the most time-consuming things, would you say? For you?
As you were talking through that, I was remembering our process that we had, and it was very manual. And now, of course, you've got various marketing automations that can help you, but it is still a very manual process, because you got to pick. It sounds daft, doesn't it? You've got to pick the phone up if you've got the number, or you've got to go and door knock them, or you write them a letter even now. And whilst you might have an automated letter that goes out to them, there's still pressing of buttons and that sort of thing. So actually, to have it running in the background, it just goes to show the value that is in a database. Stephen Brown always talks about, mining your database and the gold that's in there. It sounds, by all accounts, Mark, that this AI Scout enables people to really unlock the value in the database. And presumably, if people didn't listen to the podcast that we did a few months ago, this is all on the back of having the big data set and having it all linked together. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I guess one of the problems with AI at the moment is it's so boring because it's so widespread, like everything's got AI on it and there are so many solutions. You could listen to this and then, someone might drop you an email later, a sales email, and you think, oh, brilliant, I'll look at that. But there's a really important part for agents to think about when they're stepping into this world, which is there's something called point AI and there's platform AI. So point AI would be a single solution that does one thing. So let's say, for instance, you came back to me and said, oh, I was chatting to this company that can, I don't know, follow up my viewings for me or qualify my portal leads or something. That's a point AI. And the problem with point AI is that it does one job and you have to train the AI, and then it does that job, and then you'll need another AI to do another job in your business, and you'll need another one to do another job in the business, and eventually you'll end up with, say, 25 different AIs, all members of staff that have never met and don't really know how to talk to each other, and they all act slightly differently. Whereas platform AI there's one central source, there's one central AI brain. In our case, it's called Uzair. And then Uzair builds lots of different little bots that work for it. So the central brain understands everything because of that big data that you're talking about. It knows what buyers you've got registered. It knows where they're looking. It knows how they were qualified and whether they need a mortgage. And now it knows also what market appraisals you've done in the past. It knows who's done instant valuations. It knows who's been out on viewings, what the viewing feedback was. So when it comes to starting a conversation with some of these prospects, it doesn't just go, oh, we can see you've been on the market for 8 weeks. It can go, hey, you did a viewing with us last year and we can see that it wasn't the right property for you because the garden was too small. How's that going? And also how's the sale of your property going? Knowing that it's been, it can act more like an actual, like you would want it to. So yeah, it is all by luck or by good planning. Lifecycle was even ready-made for this kind of purpose.
Sounds a little bit to me like if you've got a sales team, so you've just got a sales team and they're just out there doing their thing individually, their individual job roles, versus you've got a sales team, but you've got a project manager that's kind of orchestrating what everyone's doing is the difference. And I can see that in a state agency at the moment, we've all been guilty of this magpie effect where we want a little bit of the new shiny stuff, but nothing ever really kind of integrates with each other, or no one really knows how to use everything together. We just want a bit of everything. And then estate agents just really become just busy fools trying to I've got this, I've got Nano Banana and I'm using chat and I've got, this going on, or I've got my data through 20A, or I've got my Sprift report. You've got all of these different things, but nothing really works together to make you faster.
Yeah, I think it's just when you do it the way that we're doing it, sometimes it can feel a bit slower, because, for instance, you can go and just use all those tools now. And not all of the tools that you mentioned you can use inside Lifecycle. But, that's just because when you're doing it this way, it takes a bit more planning to try and make sure you get it right with all the rest of the systems. A bit like how many years ago was it that they reinvented flip phones, but Apple didn't get involved, because it's going to take them longer to get it worked throughout their whole ecosystem. Maybe next year they'll do it, or maybe the year after. So it could feel a little bit like they're lagging behind. But it's not that they're lagging behind. They're just trying to get the technology to work perfectly inside an ecosystem as opposed to a standalone, I don't know, WhatsApp tool or presentation tool, which is obviously a lot quicker and easier to make because it doesn't have what we call the tail risk. When the dog turns around, was the tail knock over? We have to think about that even for the simplest of projects. But the end result is that it can just work magically together to reduce revenue, to reduce the amount of time that agents spend on non-revenue generating tasks, which again I kind of spoke about at EAX. Like, the goal of the game is to increase revenue per employee. So you need a complete solution, if you like, to say, like, look, you can remove these tasks in order to do these tasks, and that will lead to higher revenue per employee. And you saw we had quite a few agents up on stage that had been through that, and were talking about just how much their turnover and all of that sort of stuff had changed by doing it. So that's the kind of goal for us. Rather than bringing this just cool tool, is all towards that vision of Iceberg, if you like, which is to future-proof estate agents and get them to make more profit.
Yeah, the profit's a key thing. We try and talk about it a little bit on the podcast, don't we, Mark, as much as we can, but it is still seen as a little bit of a dirty word in the UK. But I do think that's the big difference that we're talking about here. I really like the bit where you spoke about revenue per employee, because it's something, again, as estate agents, it's so hard to make a very profitable business because there's so much cost involved in running an estate agency. It's a difficult one, Mark, right?
Yeah, this isn't, as some people fear AI. I think you make a really good point there. This isn't to get rid of team members and employees, but it's actually to increase the revenue that they're able to generate, and then, like you say, the profitability of the business. We should be really encouraging this, and it's great to hear that people like yourself are out there promoting it and promoting on stage. This company have adopted this and generated that, because that is the inspiration and what we need to be looking at as an industry. We need to be, if we can make more profit, then we can reinvest that in our teams. We can recruit better people. We can improve standards in the industry, which is, what anyone who's passionate about the industry is looking to achieve. AI doesn't affect that negatively. It enables people to go out and achieve more and push standards up in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, what I was talking about on stage was I was talking about this new generation. My son is 17 and he'll be entering the workforce soon. His name's Fraser. So I used him as the example. And I was saying, look, Fraser isn't going to open an estate agency the way you understand it. He's coming to eat your fucking breakfast. Like, he's not going to get expert agent. He's not going to do these manual tasks. He's not going to follow up with viewings manually. He's not going to do vendor care manually. He's not going to prospect manually. His revenue per employee is going to be through the roof. And because of that, he's just going to kill you. So, the problem is, for estate agencies, they're looking around at the current competition thinking, well, I'm already ahead of the game here. I don't have to move that fast. Forget those people. They're already dead. Like, we're all already dead. My company's dead. Your company's dead. Unless we imagine what the new Fraser version is that's coming, we will just end up the way of the blockbuster. There's just no question about it, because if you've got, Ben sat on stage, Ben from Keystone, he had revenue per employee of 37,000 per employee was his revenue. And he's now got a revenue of 100,000 per employee. Like, that makes an incredible difference to a company, because they can spend more money on marketing, they can spend more money on technology, they can just be smarter and live a better life. And they're the companies, when people on the outside of our industry start to see it's possible to have a revenue per employee of 100, 150,000, more people will want to get involved in a estate agency than currently do, and that will kill the incumbents, if you like.
Yeah. You see the stuff, don't you, on social media about teenagers, the adverts, teenagers building businesses using AI in the bedroom. And I know there's a lot of advertising in there and all of that, but it is right. It's a really good point to try and imagine what the industry will look like in a few years. Can we just digress a little bit, Mark? Because I'm really interested, as an outsider, not knowing a great deal about tech. It seems like that, I know you've designed your business in a certain way, but it seems like some of these accomplishments or ideas that you come up with at Iceberg maybe come as a bit of a surprise. You think, I'm imagining a meeting where you're blue sky thinking, right, what do you think we can do? Like throw ideas at a wall and see what sticks. And you might walk into that meeting thinking that's never possible, but then actually it turns out to be. Can you talk to us a little bit about that process? Because I'd love to be a fly on the wall. I bet it's a really interesting meeting. And are you genuinely shocked when you see some of the results?
Yeah, it usually involves a lot of rum.
Sounds like my sort of meeting.
Yeah, it is kind of like that, to be honest. I mean, obviously, like, you know, we have a vision of the company, a 10-year goal, a 3-year goal, a 1-year goal, 90-day meetings, all of that sort of stuff. But you know, we do just have like crazy brainstorming days as well in there. We get agents involved in it, and we've taken some of our agents with us to our development team that were over in Turkey, and you know, we sit and we just talk about what if. I think I read in a book somewhere once, or listened on a podcast, that when they first started Airbnb, they went through this process with a mentor of what would a 5-star service look like, and they sort of really just settled on, well, you turn up, the place is clean, the keys are there, and everything's as it should be. And then they sort of went on with it to like, there's no rules. What would a 6-star service look like? And they go on and they say, oh, I don't know, you turn up and there's a bottle of wine on the table. And what would a 7-star service be? And they go on and on and on until eventually they're sort of getting to the stage where they're saying, you turn up, Elon Musk's there, you go for a trip in his rocket and all of that sort of stuff. And once you go that far, getting to the stage where there's a bottle of wine on the table doesn't seem that crazy anymore. And so we kind of try to go to the moon with stuff. And we then go, right, that's where it's going to end up, but we can't build all of that now. So let's work down into layers. What does the first layer of it look like? And then we know that we're building the right thing for layer 27, if that makes sense. So sometimes we might release something and someone will go, that's really cool, but I wish you'd done this. And it's like, well, we will do that. But first of all, we have to put the foundation in. So yeah, the meetings are pretty crazy. But a lot of the time, especially with AI, you know, AI is one of them things whereby no one really knows how it works. So you do get a bit surprised. We can talk through the process of how you program an AI, but people would probably find it a bit boring. But anyone who says they know how it works is just lying. You have to see the results before you go, wow, look what we made. It's like, technically you didn't make it, you know, it made itself.
I've seen one of your planning meetings. Most agents or most business owners would go to a kind of planning meeting with an A5 notepad, and they'd be like, right, let's get stuck into it. You bring a roll of wallpaper, flip it upside down and lay it across the biggest dining table you've ever seen. Yeah. I think it's great because I watched one of those videos as you were kind of doing it and just brain dumping. I think one of the things that we found when we launched Avocado, me and Mike, was working with an action coach after about sort of 12 months, something like that. I think we worked with an action coach for about 8 months. And the biggest takeaway was working on the business, not in the business, for a period of time each month. And it's probably been the biggest game changer for us, because I think as agents, we are in this hamster wheel. In fact, I was talking to one of the guys the other day, and they were saying, it'd be great if we could do something through the answering service. You know, it's kind of a little thing. And we went full circle back, and then they kind of said, I'd love to talk to more buyers myself, actually, and register them. And I went, would you really want to? And then we kind of went into his database, and in Lifecycle, there's the heads up system where the buyers register themselves. And the way it works for us is if someone calls in to register on the phone, our answering service sends them the link to heads up so that the buyer can register themselves, and they're in there. And we worked out that they had like 112 people that had registered over the summer for just their particular patch. And then we said, what's the time that it takes to register the average buyer? We basically worked out that we were saving them like 16 hours, in a month just through buyer registrations. And it's those little tech adoptions, it's those little opportunities that with the right software, with the right advancements of tech, And then what I love from a life cycle perspective is that heads up buyer is then matched with AI buyer matching. So it's not even like the estate agent then needs to go, okay, well, we registered 10 buyers last week, we better mail shop them. That doesn't need to happen because it's done on automation. And that advancement in tech for a self-employed agent is so time valuable that it means you could do in a week maybe another 3 valuations and get 2 more listings and earn maybe $5,000 a month extra as a self-employed agent. That's quite huge, when you really break it down.
Yeah, the problem that we have sometimes with our planning is I can go crazy with that. Like, we can go even further with it, and there are plenty of things that we've mapped out that sit on the shelf that agents are just not really ready for. Like, even that you're talking about took a long time for me to convince agents that they didn't need to speak to all their registrations. Even now, I might talk to an agent and they're like, right, great, okay, so it does this heads up registration, that's really good. And then and then how do the team know? So like, how do the team know what? How do the team know that all these people have registered? So like, what do the team need to know for? Well, because they need to speak to them. About what? Well, just talk to them. But why? And then it comes out like, well, because they want to find out who's got a house to sell. It's like the system does that. The system will give you a list of who's got a house to sell. All right, well, I just want to talk to them. Well, why? Like, the system's doing the matching. And it's that even some of our most forward-thinking agents, again, I spoke about this at EAX, they're going to have to rip up the rule book. Like, even the ones like Ben that have done 400% extra turnover, he's got to tear up the rule book. There is no place now for, I know the system chases viewing feedback, but I'm just going to chase the ones that it didn't answer. There's no time for it. There's literally you've got no time for it. There are 750 listings sitting over here in Predict that need to be put on the market with you. Like, it's £2.5 million worth of fees sitting here. There's no time to just leave voicemails over and over again for somebody that doesn't want to leave you any feedback. Like, we've got to get over the manual crap that we do just because we've always done it and start thinking Fraser is coming and we're all going to die. So we've got to switch. So it's crazy. I mean, like, I was chatting to Shane just the other day from Harrison Wood and talking to him about some ideas. He was like, oh my God, this will be amazing. I was like, I can't ever build it. No agent will buy that. They're just not ready for it, So you have to tone it down a little bit as well and actually, go a little bit slower sometimes.
Do you think, Mark, there's a risk that the portals could, obviously they've got the funds, right? Do you think there's a risk that your Zoopla, your Rightmove could really integrate some of what we're talking about here? You say agents aren't ready for it, but I don't know whether the portals potentially are more ready for it because there's more firepower, Claret, and they've got the traffic, they've got the data, haven't they, at a different level. Do you think there is a risk that if agents don't adopt it in the right way and kind of almost go to that Elon Musk in the rocket 10-star level of business running, that could sweep us away a little bit or sweep a segment of the agency industry away?
Yeah, definitely. There's one of the things another thing that we spoke about EAX was just the fact that, Google's search traffic is down for the first time in 22 years. Obviously, all those people went to ChatGPT. So people used to search in Google to do their own research, but they're not doing that in GPT. They're just looking for an answer. So if you're not in the answer, you're not in the equation. Now, that's not going to be the only form of marketing. But you could comfortably say that 50% of people might end up speaking to GPT. And, I see a lot of stuff around, the portals are not ready for the AI. It doesn't do AI search and it doesn't do this and it doesn't do that. But GPT at the moment, it will use Rightmove and Zoopla and things like that as a reference because they're the biggest players. So what happens if they decide that they're going to start promoting certain agents over others and you can pay extra for it? Like, what effect would that have on GPT and what effect would that have to your business? What happens if one of them decides to release a training module, and if you take it, your listings get a special star on them and the rest of the agents don't? What happens if they release a software that you use that has an effect on things? So if you think you're over the barrel with the portals right now, and some people don't mind because it's, I see it as a good return on investment, wait until they control what GPT is saying, and then you'll really find out what happens when you're over a barrel. So I think it's critically important for agents to, as I say, I just can't stress enough. It's not just agents. I'm going through the same thing myself. You have to reinvent your business right now for what it looks like in 2025 and 2026, because what we've known in a estate agency for 30 years really hasn't changed that much. You don't have to use Lifecycle. You don't even have to use software, really. If you're willing to manually upload to portals, you could do it on a pad and a pen if you really wanted to. But you're not going to keep up with this manually. You're just not.
Yeah. So back on the AI scouts. So how does it work for an agent? So like I say, I got my team on a call next. So each scout is attached to one postcode, right? So for me, where I live, RG45, for example. So this scout, you kind of assign it to that postcode as a reference, would you?
Yeah. I mean, as I say, the easiest way to think about it is like a football scout. If you've ever played, I don't know, Football Manager or anything like that. So you say, you name the scout, you give it a name. So, you say, this is my scout, Susie Smith, and she's going to work in RG45, and off she goes. And then she takes a couple of days and she'll come back with about 80% of all the listings that are on the market and their full addresses, and what the status of those properties is. She will then go into your database and look at all your market appraisals and change the statuses of all the ones that have got the wrong status, so that anything where you've gone, oh, this one's got a proposal sent to it, she'll change it to, well, it's on the market with another agent. The knock-on effect of that is that they'll then fall into the right nurture journey, so that they start receiving the right content from you, what to do when you're not happy with your agent and all of that sort of stuff. She will match it up with the contact details of the people in your database and say, hey, you know the person who lives here. This is their mobile number. This is their email address. She would then match up all the buyers that are looking in that specific location for that type of property, and give you a kind of overview breakdown, a bit like a football scout would say, how useful is this person in terms of your formation? So based on what you've got, how useful is this person? She'll look at which ones have been out on viewings, which ones of them have had previous market appraisals, which one of them have had some interaction with your company, and how and why. And she'll look at what properties you've sold nearby within a half a mile, 5 miles, 10 miles, whatever it might be. And then she'll also pass all of that information over to Uzair, which is the AI assistant, who will then write 3 formats for you. They'll write a letter if you don't happen to have the contact details and you do want to send some sort of letter, but it's still personalised to that person. They'll write an email and they'll write a WhatsApp, so that literally the staff can go in there. They can claim a lead. They can go, right, I'll own that one, and then they can just contact the person and follow up and win the business, basically.
And it does it for all the statuses as well. So you've got your new listings, you've got your withdrawals, you've got your fall throughs.
Yes, does it for sales, lettings. Not sure how useful lettings will be yet to see, really, because that's a bit more difficult. It's not that hard to get landlord details, but it's pretty hard to get landlord details with contact information. So just getting someone's name is not that useful. So lettings, I wouldn't say there's a great deal happening on lettings, but on the sales side of things, yeah, it's looking at what's available, what's SSTC, what's had a sale fall through, what's been withdrawn, what's currently SSTC, all of that sort of stuff. It's also looking at some data around demographics, who's likely to come on the market. It's looking at your old market appraisals and looking at who's been active on your website. People that have registered for Heads Up that have said they've got houses to sell that have been active recently, instant valuations. So just looking across all of that, really. And what I'm seeing with the agents that are testing it is there's too much. If anything, there's too much for them to do. They even if they could find lots of time to work on it, they'd still have too much to do. Like there's so many that literally I could log into your database, sit here, know nothing about the company, and just start giving you listings. It's insane. It's totally insane.
Yeah, you can't find an agent who doesn't want too many leads, though, can you? That's the power in this, and especially in the market that we're in, where there's a lot of stock on the market. Finding the motivated buyers within that stock. So those will be the buyers that are on the website, and there'll be a score tracking system, presumably. Those will be the ones that, you know, are almost like the easy pickings. So, if I want to go back to trying to deliver a bit of value to estate agents listening who maybe aren't with Iceberg, if that's all right, Mark. So
cool.
you mentioned before about some of your blue sky thinking in that what if, and you're planning those. I think that's a really interesting takeaway, that it doesn't matter who provides your CRM, that ripping up the rule book and saying what if is a really good task, especially at this time of year as we're coming into business planning for next year and that sort of thing. But let's just talk AI if you're not with Iceberg for a moment. And what advice can you give, other than join Iceberg, what advice can you give to agents who aren't in your CRM, who are maybe listening to this thinking, well, actually, this isn't that relevant to me? How can they get some value out of today's podcast?
Yeah, I think, like you said, I think you can't, as much as it is a bit of a boring subject now, it's on into overkill, you can't really afford to switch off to the idea and go, you know what, I don't think people want to talk to a robot. Like, no one wants to talk to a robot. Like, you know, that's not what we're talking about. And you can't switch off to the idea that it's going to, is this going to put you out of business, or is this going to replace you? Just sort of just bury your head in the sand. As a very small way to just start thinking about it. It's just, what if you could get something to free up your time in your business? What would it be? You know, and that's maybe just the start of it. And maybe you will end up in a bit of a mess with it. You know, maybe you'll just get one tool and it will do one thing for you, but it might help you to kind of see what's possible. You know, because I think, for a lot of people, they won't embrace it in any way, and so therefore they don't get to see what's possible. But as soon as you start to get to see what's possible, all of a sudden, like, your mind opens up on it, and you say, like, oh, I can see now. Like, I can remember when we all used to have Nokias. The idea that one day you would watch telly on a phone just seemed impossible, because we were picturing like a telly with a massive back and all of that sort of stuff. Like, it's just impossible. But as you start to see it, it makes sense. It's not exactly a telly, you know, it's something slightly different. And AI is not a robot. It will probably never be a humanoid robot. You know, it's just not worth the hassle of trying to build a human to do this thing. It's just like this. The AI Scouts is a good example. It's a job that isn't really being done, certainly not to this level. A human can't do it to this level. So it's just augmenting you to be able to now step in and have like human conversations. If we can systemize the predictable, we can humanize the exceptional, right? So you can actually step in and have the conversations with the people that you wanted. Going back to that registration conversation, you don't want to speak to registrations. You want to speak to people that have got houses to sell in your area. So if I can just show you the 5 out of the 112 that registered, and the other 112 are happy with the customer experience because they're getting their matches and all of that sort of stuff, that's what we wanted, right? So I would say for people that aren't with Iceberg and aren't using AI and aren't really thinking about it, or are saying like, no, it's just going to be humans. Like, yeah, I like humans too. It is going to be humans, but it's going to be humans that know who to talk to and aren't having to do manual tasks and pay that hourly wage to people to do a task that can be done better, with a better customer experience by a computer.
What was that? Was that? Can you just repeat that, Mark? I don't know whether that is normally a term you use within the business, but you said systemize the predictable to
humanize the exceptional. Yeah, it was something that the guy who started the 4 Seasons said. So yeah, it just fits in perfectly with the whole situation that we're in at the moment. We're not talking about. I'm certainly not talking about people getting rid of their staff. Now they might have to get rid of their staff if their staff won't change, because simple economics. If I've got one person using AI that can qualify 100 leads in a day, and I've got another person who refuses to use AI that gets through 5, economics is going to make that person redundant. But if they can move across and go, oh, right, so we don't need to qualify leads anymore. No, but can you speak to all of these people that like the AI scouts have found, and they've even written you the script, and could you maybe have a chat with those people and turn them into revenue generating machines? Like then all of a sudden you're actually in a stronger position, because the Frasers of the world are startups. They've got no money at the moment. Like you and me and companies that already exist, we've already got money. We're already the blockbuster. When you look across and you go, how did they mess it up? They couldn't imagine what was coming in Netflix. They were looking across at Ritz Video going like, hell, we're beating those guys, but they couldn't imagine what was coming. Like Kodak were the first people to invent a digital camera, and they just buried it because they didn't want their existing business to suffer, So it's just a question of going, look, we've got all these resources, but they're not going, it's going to drown us if we're spending an hourly wage on chasing viewing feedback, and this guy over here comes through like in a steamroller.
As Mark uses.
Yeah.
I was trying to think back previously to like some of the little magic moments in my career, and I remember when we had a CRM, and all of a sudden portal leads started going into the system for the first time. So rather than getting the email and then you register them in the system and you try and speak to them, they were just automatically in there. At the time, they were called a grade 0. I don't know why we graded. Like a proceedable was a grade 3. I remember it now vividly. Not a market local was a grade 2. They were your hot ones. And these grade 0s started coming in. It was like, wow. It was like a magical moment that just portal leads were straight in the system. And just these little things that have, evolved now that you just take for granted. And, some of the agents that started in 10 years ago today, in 2015, for example, wouldn't have experienced that. It's just the norm to them. But it does make me get quite excited with, 2030 sounds like a big number, but, it's 5 years away. So what does that look like in the estate agency world? And it's quite exciting because I think we're in this transitional phase again, like we were when the mobile and the portals and digital experience kind of kicked in and everyone moved away from the newspapers and everyone started going more online-y. And then I think lockdown brought a bit more of the social media sort of party to estate agency, and everyone's kind of gone, oh, actually we can do property videos and we can do social media stuff. And it'll be interesting to see what the next less than 5 years really, but the next 2 years do, because the adoption of AI in the sort of generation of what we're looking at here of estate agents, I think is being adopted. But I think podcasts like this are great for people to listen to because it puts it into boxes so you understand how to keep it kind of in the roadmap, because it's very easy to kind of just go, wow, there's so much, I'm going to do nothing.
Yeah, I think what sums it up for me, I always talk about this split in the industry, this divide that's happening. I've been talking about it since 2018, actually, and now it's like a canyon, but it's invisible. It's totally invisible. But what puts it into context for me is if you think back to Ben, who was on stage, Ben had a turnover of 150,000 a year out of one branch. He was struggling a bit, and now he's turning over 700 grand out of the same branch. Right, that's 400% increase. His market hasn't got any bigger. Like, he hasn't gone into new areas. He's just eating someone's lunch. There's another agent, probably a few of them out there, that are going, things have got really tough. And that's the divide I'm talking about. It's invisible. That agents can't see it. I've got agents having absolute blockbuster record months. And at the same time, you go on Facebook and there are people going, it's so tough. Like, you'll never see it coming. There's never going to be an obvious, like, oh, if we did this, we'd be okay. But it's already happening. There are tons of agents that have gone out of business over the last 5 years. And there are tons of agents that are absolutely smashing it over the last 5 years. So it's just this invisible line that for some reason, like, you can't see. I guess most of the people, if they're listening to this podcast, they're probably already on the right side of the line because they're out there listening, thinking, going to do this. There are more agents out there that are not listening to yours or mine or anyone else's podcast than there are that are actually doing it. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think over the next few years, you see an even bigger influx of new style agents working a new way, and old style agents, maybe boomers that are ready to retire, maybe agents that go out of business, and just the transformation just continues.
Yeah, it's a great point.
I'm just a bit conscious of time, Mark, but I'm really interested, probably for my own entertainment, really, more than anything. And one of the things that you've said, which was there's stuff that we can do that agents aren't ready for. Is there anything within that you could share that would make agents think, oh, wouldn't that be a good idea? The really forward thinking ones. Or is there anything you could share in your what if sort of thinking that would be really cool for agents to actually adopt into the business?
Well,
without giving away too many trade secrets, obviously.
Yeah, no, but it's quite straightforward in the sense that I can, for instance, I could record agents' market appraisals. So we have a market appraisal presentation tool, and Ian probably knows that a lot of agents use that when they're out on market appraisals on their iPad. They show the client different buyers that they've got and all of that sort of thing. So because you have the presentation open, I could record the conversation. I can pass the conversation to AI, and Ian could see exactly how all his team are getting on. He could see who's talking about the right stuff, who's talking about the wrong stuff. He could see who's covering the pitch correctly, who's putting across the right points, who's talking about mortgages, who isn't. It could then look at who's following up with leads in Predict, what conversations are they having with those people. It could look at the telephone conversations that they're having, the WhatsApp communication. It could look across the statistics of your company and see, like, why are we suffering in the Colchester branch? It could look at who looks at what properties online and look at all the different descriptions and compare those descriptions and say, like, don't write your descriptions like that. They don't work. Write them like this. This is how this works. But there are so many different ways that you could go with it. But one of the most basic things is that most agents don't really have a formula for how their diary works in a week. And this is a big problem for us because we create these tools like Predict, which is where the AI scouts live. But an agent, even if they thought it was a brilliant idea, their week's already full. So when do you spend time on Predict? So I could get the AI to organize your week for you. I could get it to go, right, this is when you're doing viewings. This is when you're doing predictors. No one would want that. They would ignore it. They would switch it off and they would go, I know best. And they'd go back to never getting around to doing Predict, So it's a hard one because we've got to be commercially, we've got to have a commercial head on whereby people have to buy this product, not just think it's cool. And at the same time, we want to push the boundaries of what's possible. As I say, most businesses outside of a state agency, they monitor revenue per employee, but that doesn't happen in a state agency. So even though I build things around the idea of increasing revenue per employee, it doesn't make sense to an estate agent until I have to actually explain the model. It's not hard, turnover divided by employees, but it's not something that they've grown up with. They've grown up with the idea of winning listings, which doesn't make any money. So you just have to find the balance in the realm of, like, craziness to what does an agent actually, what they're willing to pay for.
No, it's a great way to kind of summarize it, because that again brings it all back to, we're in the business of business, aren't we? We're not in the business of, like you say, market share. We're in the business of business, and that's what keeps us going. And I always say I've been fortunate enough to start quite a few new businesses over the last couple of years. Everything gets a lot easier once you've got revenue coming in. You can make faster decisions, better decisions once you've got profit getting made in the business. And that's got to be the number one goal for agents, regardless of what's going on in budgets and AI and social media and, inter-industry debates. Make profit. Your decision tomorrow is going to be a lot easier when you've got profit coming in on the business. So I appreciate you jumping on, Mark, and sharing what's going on, a little bit behind the scenes and in action now as well. This is sort of fresh the last couple of weeks that agents have been using it. And I'm obviously in the WhatsApp group. I can see the excitement in there as well, which is great. And I think it's really good to just see the industry moving with the times, moving forward, regardless of what you're using. As we said, that chasm is there, and it's just really important that the agents are learning and got an open mind to what else they can do and what else they can integrate into their business to make it a more profitable business ultimately. So yeah, thanks for coming on the show, and it'd be exciting to see what happens over, I guess, the rest of this year, because that's how fast things move these days. So yeah, we'll keep you updated on the show as well. Thanks very much.
Yeah, no problem at all. As I say, for that one little bit of nugget that Mark was looking for, just look at your revenue per employee, take your turnover, divide it by your staff, and imagine what life would be like if that number was double.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks, Mark.
No problem at all.
A massive thank you once again to Mark Burgess. I'll start again, Austin, just to scrap that because I was fucking stumbling.
Yeah, CEO of Iceberg Digital is intro.
A massive thank you to Mark Burgess, CEO of Iceberg Digital, for joining us today. Ian, it's almost like the sky is the limit with this stuff. It is mind-blowing, right?
It is mind-blowing, but I think the way that we just discussed it, I think hopefully means it brings it into a level where you can understand how to use it and how to integrate things. And some of the stuff that Mark was talking about there, which, just on the revenue per employee, those aspects of sort of business planning, so valuable for people to think about. Everyone can do that calculation. What did you turn over? How many staff do you have? What's that number? What's it for 2025? What's the target for 2026? If that's the takeaway, whether you're an Iceberg user or a Lifecycle user or not, that's a really, really valuable business lesson that probably 90% of people listening, maybe more, just probably don't do that calculation. So that's helpful, super helpful. I'm excited about the scouts and, kind of time saving opportunities for estate agents and efficiencies as well, because I think that's the real push for us, is how do we move forward quicker than the threat. We have to look at the threat, that we always look at what could be the threat to a estate agency. You have to in any business, really. If you're a cake maker, you've got to look at what your threats are with the advancements. If you're a gardener, what's your threats? And that's what we have to look at now, because whatever industry you look at, if you do think, take the gardener example, if you've got a big garden and every Thursday you had a gardener come in to cut your grass because you're 60 years old, and that was your job, that was your reoccurring value, they could go and buy a robot grass cutter now for 600 quid, and you're out of work. So no one is exempt to it. And that's, for us as estate agents, it's important that we keep stepping forward and work with people like Mark that is so forward thinking, because that will keep us ahead of the competition and ahead of the threat, most importantly.
Yeah, and he mentioned that, and it's a really interesting exercise to do. He can do it, and he's very good at naming things to bring them to life. So what is Fraser thinking? The 17-year-old who is just going to start an estate agent, how is he doing it? And actually, if you start running through that exercise with your team, or it's an exercise that you could even bring people outside of the business in to help you with. That exercise will really challenge your thinking and help you develop new strategies, bits in your business where you can implement more tech to help build these efficiencies. And as you said, revenue per employee, that should be on everyone's KPI list, because as you're growing, that figure, should be growing. It's great to hear those success stories about people in the industry because, as we talked about in the episode, it allows us to increase standards. That's ultimately where we want to be as an industry. So yeah, a really insightful chat with Mark. The tech and the level of advancement is only going to get quicker. I really like the wallpaper what if sort of meetings as well. I've written that down, and that's going to be a conversation I'll be having with my management team over the next few days, because we're literally putting in some business planning meetings as we head into November. We're recording this on the 28th of October, so those appointments are literally going in the diary. Well, today we're about to do it. So I think it's a really good time to have that chat, not only on the tech side of things and see what is possible, but also from a business planning and, if you're not using that KPI, to get that KPI into there for next year.
Yeah, processes. And I think he raised a good point on the diary. One of his biggest headaches is the estate agency diary. And I mentioned about when I worked with an action coach, one of the things that we took away from that was the importance of what they phrase as the default diary, which ultimately means that somewhere between 20 and 40% of your diary each week is habitual. And, that could be anything. It could be creating content videos for social media. It could be running your paid ads. It could be looking at X, Y, or Z, prospecting, whatever you want to call it. But having those habitual, proactive appointments in your diary, is so, so important. And what Mark finds with estate agents is their diary is full the week in advance on reactive appointments. Whether we think it's proactive or not, a valuation is a reactive appointment. Someone's requested it, we've booked it in at a time that suits them. Viewing, same scenario. Whereas if you can turn that round and become proactive with your diary, this is when I do valuations, this is when I do viewings, this is when I do content marketing, this is when I write my blog, this is when I review my website, this is when I do training with that member of staff. If you can get that proactive diary in, well, you're a more valuable business, aren't you? A more efficient business.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting one for the topics that you're about to go through, as most businesses will be, is how do we get proactive again? The reactive market is gone, isn't it? The boom and the pop of stamp duty and furlough funds, that's all gone. We as estate agents now need to be proactive rather than reactive to really make the big difference, I think.
Yeah, we call ours a high performance week based on our work with our business coach and that, and we encourage the team to have those times where they prospect, where different members of the team do their specific tasks. But it actually top and tails the episode really well, because it breeds into that consistency. How we opened today's episode, we're talking about the running or gym habits. It's exactly the same. Make it habitual, make it consistent, and the growth that you'll see over an extended period of time is just absolutely massive.
Yeah, for sure. No, great episode. I'm sure there's a lot of questions and value that people have taken from it. So, if anyone does want to know any more information around any of that, obviously they can reach out to any of us or direct to Mark himself if it's on the Scouts. But yeah, really valuable, forward-thinking topic today. So I enjoyed that convo for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, we do this because we love our industry. We want to see it improve and get better. If you have enjoyed today's episode, as Ian said, either reach out to one of us, reach out to Mark. If you've got any questions about Iceberg, share it with colleagues, share it out on social media. I'm Mark Worrell. He's Ian Macbeth. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you again next week.